the peace deal in Gaza, in Palestine. Here is what we've learned from the Hamas officials. He's talking about the peace deal. He's talking about disarmament of Hamas, and here is what he said.
We believe and we hope that President Trump continue to interfere personally and to exercise the maximum pressure on Netanyahu to fulfill its obligation, first as according to the deal, and second according to the international law as an occupying power. Because I think without this pressure, without this personal interference from President Trump, this would not happen.
But
Our
clear, though,
weapons
just to be clear,
are going to be handed over only to the hands of a Palestinian state. And our fighters can be integrated into the Palestinian National Army. Before that, no one has the right to deny us the right to resist the occupation by all means.
Now you're...
Yeah, you see the official position of Hamas.
Yeah, I think first of all, this isn't a peace agreement at all. It's a ceasefire, much like the previous ceasefires. Its only concrete element is the exchange of captives, hostages on both sides. I note that the Israelis refuse to release anybody in the Palestinian leadership who might be capable of moving on to a peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Marwan Barghouti, for example, was explicitly retained in an Israeli prison. It is entirely correct what the Hamas spokesman said. People under occupation have the right to resistance under international law, including armed resistance. As long as there is an occupation, there will be resistance. Therefore, a 20-point agreement that doesn't deal with this issue at all and finally ends in point 20 with saying, well, if you do everything else that's favorable to Israel, we can talk about a second state, a Palestinian state. This is not a path to peace at all. And I'm very pessimistic that this agreement, to the extent it is an agreement, because it's very clear that there are great differences between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I note that Jared Kushner is on record in the New York Times today saying that, well, the art of the deal is to get the people to yes and then work out the details later. Well, that might work in a financial transaction over a real estate project, but it doesn't work when there's no common interests that have been established between the parties, or when you're not mediating, but attempting to impose an agreement on two sides. Evidently, President Trump did lean pretty hard on Prime Minister Netanyahu. That is unusual. He did it privately. We have no idea how forceful he was or what he threatened. But the record does not support the hopeful language of the Hamas spokesman that they can count on President Trump to force Israel to produce a peace process. Israel has not accepted a Palestinian state as an objective. It has not even agreed to withdraw from all of Gaza on a schedule, and it will continue to control Gaza. We will see an early test of this, not only with the delivery of the 600 trucks that are supposed to cross into Gaza with food supplies and medical supplies, but also in whether Gaza is open to the press, because Israel has killed 220 journalists, and it does not want the press in Gaza to see what it is doing. And my prediction, which Trita will correct me on, I'm sure, is that there will be a violation of the ceasefire. Actually, there's already been an explosion in Gaza after the time of the ceasefire going into effect. But there will be some violation of the ceasefire. Maybe it will be by Islamic Jihad or someone else, but it will be attributed to Hamas, which has been successfully demonized, and that will justify the Israeli resumption of the genocide, which Bezalel Smotrich has already called for. So I don't think there's any agreement here at all. I think there is a hostage exchange, and I don't see that it necessarily leads anywhere, and it certainly won't if President Trump remains beholden to his Israeli backers, and as Benjamin Netanyahu said, under Netanyahu's control.
Trita, go ahead.
Thank you. I think, Chaz, your skepticism is quite warranted. The track record is very clear. We had a similar situation in January of this year, a deal, 3 phases. The Israelis made it clear from the outset they're not even interested in getting to phase 2. And by March, they sabotaged a ceasefire, canceled the entire deal, and the Trump administration blamed Hamas and exonerated Israel. So with that track record and plenty of other things, I think there's significant justification for a lot of skepticism, and a lot of the language out in the media right now is extremely charitable, to say the least. But let me also suggest a potentially less problematic pathway. It is quite clear that this is not a peace deal because it doesn't even get to the core issue, which is the occupation. You cannot have peace, even in the best case scenario, if this is all implemented, we return back to a pre-October 7th situation, which still had occupation and everything else that's fueled the conflict in the first place. But I think there is some reasons to believe that this time around, Trump will be less tolerant of Israeli sabotage than he was last time around.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is primarily the Israelis overreacted, they overextended themselves, and they went too far by the attack on Doha. This really backfired in the region. It backfired within the White House itself, in which the balance of the debate seems to have shifted. And it became very, very clear that what Israel is doing is now increasingly costing Trump. And that brings me to the second factor, which is the real root of why it's costing Trump. In the last couple of months alone, we have seen a dramatic plunge of Israel standing within the America First constituency. And that is Trump's core constituency. We've seen that their numbers have been tanking. People have been turning against the genocide. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene using the word genocide long before Bernie Sanders did. You have anger from Steve Bannon, almost daily attacking Netanyahu, Tucker Carlson, many others, including Charlie Kirk, incidentally, who mostly did this privately, but now we know of some of the things that he did privately. Trump is already on record pointing out that this is costing him. He reportedly told the Israelis, you can't fight the entire world. And I think the Doha strike ended up becoming the trigger that brought all of this together. And unlike Biden, who either didn't have the courage, backbone, guts to do anything about it, or didn't see it as costing him a lot, but it did cost him the election, arguably, Trump seems to have seen it and seems to have acted. Now, nothing will come of this unless he sustains the pressure. And that's another big difference. He's willing to put pressure on Netanyahu. Biden never was. And I find it interesting because right now, there's some Biden folks that are coming out there and trying to take credit for this deal and saying that they lay the groundwork for it. They lay the groundwork for the genocide. If you want to take credit for the deal, you have to take credit for the disaster that they also brought about here. But the key difference of the ingredients is that, yes, they may have worked on a plan that is very similar to what this ended up being. But the key ingredients that makes it happen is the willingness to put pressure on Netanyahu. And we never saw that under Biden. And we only seen that temporarily, episodically under Trump. And for this to actually work, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be sustained. We have not seen that yet. So again, reason for skepticism. But reason for optimism is this is now costing Trump. And he is acting in his own self-interest or how he perceives it in a way that he is not willing to sacrifice it for the sake of Netanyahu or for the Israelis. Now, having said all of this, I think we also have to recognize that even if all of this happens, but they don't go for something that actually does address the occupation, then it's just bringing us back to pre-October 7th. It's not a peace deal in that. It's not a peace deal to go back to October 6th in any way, shape, or form. But this is nevertheless a necessary step to get a ceasefire and make sure the ceasefire ends up becoming permanent before we can address any of those other issues.
So even right after the ceasefire agreement, so-called, was reached, President Trump demanded that Israel stop bombing Gaza, and they didn't. They bombed right up to the last minute this morning, when or noon, I guess, in West Asia. I note that we don't have to go back to the January hostage deal, which was aborted by the Israelis. Look at what's happened in Lebanon. Israel agreed to withdraw from Lebanon. It has not. Israel agreed to a ceasefire. It has violated that ceasefire 4,600 times. It has struck UN facilities. It has struck Lebanese of all sorts. There is no reason to believe that Israel will behave differently, given the fact that its objective remains the removal of all Palestinians, or as many as possible, from Palestine. Let me talk about, briefly, take a little bit of issue with you, Trita, on the question of the domestic political base for Trump's support of Israel. It is true that various online media personalities, Tucker Carlson and so on, and one or two members of Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene, have come out and attacked him for his subservience to Israel, on basically the same grounds that this is humiliating for an American patriot and nationalist. He doesn't seem to pay any attention to that. I'm not sure that he will pay attention to it, because the counterforces to that are in motion. I believe there's been a $145 million investment made in the manipulation of social media by the Israeli Strategic Affairs Ministry. We see the purchase of TikTok by Zionist billionaires who propose to alter the algorithm to be favorable to Israel and to block any adverse information about it. I don't know whether they can do that technically or not, but that's the objective. These are signs of a fairly desperate Israeli recognition that they are losing the public relations battle in the United States. They are losing the support of the great external power that they require to survive, and they have to do something about it, and they're trying very hard. So I suspect any effort that Donald Trump, or any inclination that he has to lean heavily on the Israelis, will be strongly countered by his donors and other people to whom he is beholden. And I note that the two negotiators here, Jared Kushner and Stephen Witkoff, are both Zionists, that there was no consultation with any Palestinian at all, not even the Palestinian Authority, which is a subcontractor of the occupation, about Palestinian interests. And I'm not sure that anybody in the United States government recognizes Palestinian interests, which have always been self-determination and basically to be left alone by the Israelis. I'm not sure that you're right that that much has changed. It would be nice to think so.
No, you may be proven quite right on that. At the end of the day, I do think, however, we are seeing Trump reacting to the fact that his base is starting to diverge from the Israelis. And of course, there's a huge difference between the base and the donors. And we've seen how the donor class, even those supporting Trump, definitely, there's a strong element of people like Miriam Adelson, et cetera, that has been pushing Trump in the direction of bombing Iran and things of that nature. But I think it's fascinating. You take a look at it. He told one of those donors in end of July, he told them, "My people are starting to hate you."
Right.
You know, so I mean, there's a recognition on his end that this is a challenge for him.
Right.
He told Sean Hannity that he had told Netanyahu, "You can't keep on fighting the entire world all the time," which I think the implicit message is, I can help and protect you while you choose to fight the world all the time, that this is becoming a cost on him. And again, that doesn't mean that, he takes this step in this direction and then he won't be pushed back in the opposite direction. So you absolutely may be proven quite right. But we're seeing a dynamism here that we frankly didn't see prior to this, prior to Trump coming in with Biden. And the question is, can it lead to some sort of a scenario in which, at a minimum, it brings about a permanent ceasefire? And whether, he will end up going all the way towards a real peace, of course, we should have very, very modest expectations about. But ending this war, ending this slaughter, ending this genocide, not because there's any particular compassion for the Palestinians, but because it's starting to hurt his self-interest, I think it should not be completely discounted.